So I'm thinking, and I'm wondering something kind of weird, and I don't know what's going on. I can't explain it. But what I'm wondering is how we learn to eat. It doesn't seem necessarily intuitive to eat food so that we don't feel hungry anymore. Um, I'm not sure how we learn to eat. And in particular, what I'm thinking at the moment is how we learn to eat certain foods that aren't edible as they are, and they need to be cooked in order to be edible, like rice, for example. So when rice is uncooked and normal, as you find it somehow, it's not edible, and you have to boil it for it to become edible. And then it's good to add sauce and other things to it to make it tastier. Otherwise, it's just plain rice, which is kind of boring. So, what I'm wondering is how did we find rice and understand that it's not edible as it is, but if you boil it, then it becomes edible? I'm wondering how we learned to do that and how we knew that it would become edible if we boiled it. I don't understand how we learn to cook, basically, and how we learn to make inedible foodstuffs edible by cooking it, or baking it, or frying it, or whatever. It doesn't seem to me intuitive to understand that we could treat things in certain ways to make them edible. And things like spaghetti. How do we learn about spaghetti and how to make spaghetti and then cook it and then add sauce to it and then it's edible? So I'm just finding it hard to understand how we learned how to cook and how we understood that we needed to eat at all and how we knew what to eat and what not to eat. So why don't we eat leaves, for example, or tree bark or grass? Why is it how did we learn to eat mushrooms? How did we know that it was good food if you fried it or whatever? It just seems strange to me how we learn to make things that are not edible as they are naturally and then treat them in certain ways by cooking, frying, or grilling, or whatever, and then make them edible. And then we add sauce and stuff to it and whatever. And how do we know that we could take a chicken and take the feathers off, and then you have raw meat, but then if you cook it, you make it edible? So I'm thinking there might have been a million years ago, there might have been a forest fire and it killed some chickens. And then people saw what the fire did to the chicken and saw that the chicken became edible. And so they learned about cooking. So this is kind of random thinking about how we learn to eat food and so many types of food in so many different ways, like fish. We learn to take the fish and then peel it, take all the skin off, and then grill it, fry it, whatever, and then suddenly it becomes edible. There seems to be a lot of ways that we eat food that doesn't seem intuitive or natural to do, but we learn to do it somehow, and then the food becomes edible. So I think it's interesting to wonder how we learned how to do that. And it's interesting to know how we learn to eat too. How do we know we could eat? And how do we know what to eat and what not to eat? all seems kind of strange how we understood what we had to do and could take care of ourselves. Mm.